Secret trove of emails released by the House Oversight Committee shedding new light on how former President Donald Trump and people in his White House pressured the Justice Department on multiple fronts to do his bidding in the quest to overturn the 2020 election results. Let's dig into the emails with CNN's senior legal analyst, Laura Coates. Laura, good evening to you. Welcome to the program. So let's start with this December email. It's from Trump's White House assistant to then acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen. With the subject line, it says, "From POTUS." It was a lengthy attachment making debunked claims about a Michigan county's election results being fraudulent. What's the message in that email to the acting AG, Rosen?
Well, look at the date of it as well. You're talking about the notion, first of all, from POTUS. The man does an email. He essentially saying this is actually from the President of the United States trying to alert this person who's in this position to become the acting Attorney General that I want you to lean on this. I want you to do similar to what was happening in Georgia in the sense of that telephone call we saw with Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger about what I'd like you to look into in order to assist me in trying to persuade the public that this was actually stolen from me. It's more than a hint.
Yeah. So again, as you said, the former president, not an emailer. So if his assistant sends this email with the subject line "from POTUS," you think that is, as you said, an alert that this comes directly from the president. Look at it. Make sure you handle this.
Absolutely. And it's something I said, it's not a face-to-face, but it's, I want you to know that I want this to happen. It also gives you a little bit of distance to insulate him, to say, oh, he could say, well, let's, plausible deniability. I didn't actually send it myself. If I wanted it done, I would have picked up the phone. So it gives just enough distance to be able for former President Trump to say, hey, it wasn't me, the old Shaggy defense. At the same time, allowing the person to know, look at the email account. Look what I've been saying on television. Look what I've been saying in other places. Clearly, this is from somebody that you know is in my orbit and can convey my directive.
Gotcha. All right, let's continue on because from the POTUS emails just kept on coming. That same White House assistant sent acting AG Rosen a draft lawsuit for the Justice Department to sign on to with the goal of overturning the election results in several states. The attached lawsuit, drafted by private attorney Kurt Olson, seeks to overturn the election results in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, in Michigan, Wisconsin, and in Arizona. In what world would the DOJ sign onto a lawsuit drafted by a random person and passed along by the president like that? What?
No world in this galaxy. Imagine the audacity, the arrogance, the presumption to actually believe you're going to hand the Department of Justice, who, by the way, is full of attorneys that are well-versed and fluent in the art of brief writing and drafting complaints. It's the bulk of what they do in terms of prosecuting and investigating cases. And you're going to hand them something you think is a value add to them in some form or fashion to say, I'd like you to do this. If there actually was something to look into, they would have already done so. And of course, this idea of saying, here's a draft complaint, it wasn't as if this would have been news to them. And remember who was the Attorney General at the time, a part of this. When Rosen said there was no evidence of widespread fraud, and in the court of law, in the different courts, almost 60 of them, I believe, Don, there was no evidence to support this or back it up. So they were hoping to have and rely on the credibility that is part of the Department of Justice to go into a court and have that rapport with the federal judge to say, here, or a state judge, here's what I'd like you to look at as prosecutors. Of course, federal courts where the Department of Justice specializes in here, of course, but the idea of trying to rely and capitalize on that credibility when there was no there.
So listen, this is a kind of a side note, but I mean, it is this a window into how Donald Trump possibly ran his business because he was very litigious, and also, just as he gave legitimacy to conspiracy theorists and bigots, has he given legitimacy basically to ambulance chasers?
Well, he certainly has in over 60 different court proceedings essentially say, I'd like you to go out there and just throw something against a wall and see if it sticks. I'd like you to be able to co-sign a fishing expedition in an absolute desert. And it's ironic, of course, because if we're learning more and more, as we're learning more about Trump's DOJ and his discussions and his attempts to use through different appointees potentially, the idea of Apple to secure data from people like congressmen and also reporters like our own Barbara Starr, the idea that he would actually try to have the DOJ be complicit in fishing expeditions to promote a big lie is really par for the course at this point in time. But it's absurd to think, and of course, what I'm very glad about is that there was pushback here, Don. Imagine if people had been more receptive and said, okay, you know what, the top person has told us what to do, therefore we must oblige. The pushback is really restorative for people thinking about the credibility and the integrity of the Department of Justice in many ways.
Yeah. Listen, the pressure campaign went higher. I want to get back to the emails, okay? So it went higher than the Trump White House and White House assistant. His then chief of staff, Mark Meadows, is involved in this. He sent an email asking the acting AG Rosen to look into claims of voter fraud in Georgia, saying, quote, can you have your team look into these allegations of wrongdoing? Again, this is coming from the White House chief of staff. It was obvious to everyone how desperate Trump was just to overturn this election. Was he really, asking, or was this more of a telling?
The question for me is, why was he so emboldened to use all these different surrogates to convey these points? Was he somehow under the impression that there would be people who would act as minions as opposed to objective arbiters of the facts in a case, and against the evidence that suggests that there was no widespread fraud, there was no there in other places? The idea that he was emboldened enough to use people like Mark Meadows, that Mark Meadows would have done this, that somebody of his assistant would have done so, is really telling about how he had been accustomed to potentially operating within the Department of Justice, which I remind you is not a private law firm, Don. It is the Department of Justice. It belongs to the people of the United States, not to the President of the United States, irrespective of the fact that the person who is the Attorney General is his appointee. But this tells you that he was so potentially accustomed to having operated this way that there was almost no shame in it. And also the desperation you speak about, Don, the desperation to have somebody with legitimacy support the big lie when court after court said, is there something there? Show it to me so I can actually act on that. I can't just go on some sort of baseless gut check that really is a partisan attempt. You have to have something there for me to order something as a court of law. And the surefire way he thought to do so was to use the backing of the Department of Justice. And when they refused to do so, even calling it pure insanity, that was particularly accurate of a statement. Imagine the insanity of saying, I'd like you, the Department of Justice, as high up the chain as an acting attorney general, to lend some sort of credence to what is an absolute farce.
So much to talk about, Laura. I could go on all night, but you know what? I don't have that much time. Italian satellite conspiracies, Jewish space lasers. It goes on. Thank you, Laura Coates. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.